Hi, my name's Tom with Hidden Beats, and we have Steph Copeland today. Would you like to introduce yourself a bit to everybody? Tell them about yourself.
Sure. Thanks for having me. I'm Steph Copeland, and I'm a composer as well as a songwriter and producer. I am known for genre, mostly in sci-fi, thriller, horror, and some of the darker leaning drama. And I also am an artist, and I create dark pop or cinematic pop music. I've worked with artists Oleada, Kinley, Ria May, Tiger and Bloom, and yeah, I'm just really happy to be here. Thanks for having me on the show.
Nice, that's awesome. So my first talking point, I guess, your father was a huge part of the reason why you got into music. He had a deep love for singing, classical music. What other genres influenced your childhood and drove you to pick up the guitar as your first instrument?
Yeah, you know, my mother was also a big influence in that she got me into like she always pushed me to get into choirs and vocal lessons and things like that. So she was really backing me a lot too. But that's classical. I would have to say, you know, when I was like 8 years old, Janet Jackson's Rhythm Nation had a pretty big impact on me, and all of that really dark, awesome production that was all over that record probably, you know, got into my subconscious. And from then I had like a Casio keyboard and was really always making kind of moody piano riffs and singing over top, and then getting it like playing the guitar and writing my own original stuff. But I was always sort of into really production rich music, like Nine Inch Nails, Portishead, just really kind of sort of out of left field production, Bjork, things like that. That was kind of my speed.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot involved in those guys, which is interesting. What would you say would be the difference between writing a song and composing a whole piece, like instrumentals, everything?
The difference between writing and producing, or
Yeah.
the entire, like, just writing the song in and of itself versus finishing with all the bells and whistles, sort of.
Yeah, because you're writing a song, you know, you're kind of on one track, but as a producer, you have to obviously think of all the instrumentals and how things are kind of go with everything. So what do you think? How would you describe the differences?
You know, if when you're, I'll take a little quick pause there. If you're going into producing the track as a part of the songwriting team or as a songwriter, maybe you think of it as a whole before you know what, this is the tough question.
We like some tough questions sometimes.
In a way, like songwriting needs to be a great song as a standalone, like as like Rob Wells says, give it the campfire test. It has to be a great song when it's just being played with the acoustic guitar and a vocal, or say just on the piano and a vocal. And then, you know, going into produce that, there's a lot of different factors to consider. What is the artist going for? What are some of their favorite art? What is on it at the moment? What do they want the sound to be? And so the difference between producing and songwriting is pretty big, I would say, in that you sort of wear different hats to different jobs, but they're on the same job site.
Same job site, but different roles really, in one product to kind of come out at the end.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Production is about more, now that we have the song and we start to dive into the creative side of it, is what are some of the feelings that we want the finished product to evoke, and how do we build that from the ground up? I mean, sometimes the campfire test, you hear a song and you think, well, this is, you know, this could be, you know, a rock ballad. It could really, you know, benefit from that kind of production. But then in this, the artist really wants something extremely sparse, modern, just a nice juicy bass line, maybe some very minimal percussion, and and some just vocals and harmonies or something like that. So so it's always about really what's relevant to the artist at that time, and what do they want it to be. How do they want that song to make audiences feel, or make them feel.
So if you're hearing something, you might suggest things on the way, or is it you're really trying to play off of them more so versus giving them ideas?
It's absolutely a collaboration. 100%.
Okay.
Absolutely. It's not a, and thanks for the song, I'm going to produce it for you. It's absolutely, what do we feel is, or what does the artist feel is the treatment that they want for this song. And then we work together to achieve that, definitely. And if there's not a lot of ideas out of the gate, I just start to bring my sensibilities, and after, a deep dive conversationally with the artist to make sure that we're checking off all the boxes for them. But then I can take those references or those ideas and start to bring forth and tease out ideas into the session.
Do you find you have to do that often, or is it artists typically come to the table with a pretty good idea what they're looking for?
It's a little bit of both. Oftentimes it's and the artist really does have quite a sensibility of what they're looking for in the track.
Okay.
But maybe doesn't necessarily have the shorthand or the language in order to say exactly what that is. But through a lot of conversations and a lot of exploration, we can really get down to what the sound is ahead of time before we start arranging and bringing things into the session.
Okay. When you're like composing or producing, do you find that persona of your character differ from if you were actually performing a song yourself? Like, do you think of things differently, or like how do you approach the two, I guess, is the better way to put that question, like when you're specifically producing versus you might be actually performing a track for someone?
Performing it for someone?
Well, if you're
a live
yeah, like a live performance or like a group, or if you're presenting the track to someone after you've come up with a full make of it.
I'm not sure I understand the question. I'm so sorry.
No, that's fine. It's when you're producing a track, you try to give it a feeling, but how does that translate when you're actually presenting the track to someone? Like when you're producing it, you have a different inside thought of your feelings, I would imagine, versus trying to express that to someone else. I don't know if I'm explaining it properly now.
You know what? Maybe we're confused because I'm also an artist. So I guess am I answering as a producer or an artist?
In this question, I would say almost both.
Okay.
So if you're producing something, you look at it as a certain way, but if you're an artist, how do you express that feeling on the other end of it? By just straight up performing?
Performing live?
Yeah, live in front of a gig of some sort. Yeah.
So if I'm producing music for another artist?
Yes.
Versus producing for myself?
Yes.
Okay, I understand. Sorry, I had a hard time there.
No, sorry too. I didn't write all these questions either, so I'm trying to express Beth's thoughts basically in here too.
Okay, copy that. Okay, very good. Thanks. Producing myself, it's definitely a more personal experience in that I probably take a lot more time with my vocal takes, or I often do a lot more writing when I'm in production mode. So I might produce and try things on while writing. While when producing artists, oftentimes they'll have a lot of a song sort of prepared and ready, because in the end, they come, the more prepared they are, the better situation it is in order to expedite the process a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, when working on my own projects, I take a lot longer than anyone really should take to write and produce a track, probably because I think about it too much, and I, spend a lot of time, marinating with it and
That's probably like most creatives, I would think.
yeah.
You're always over judgmental of yourself in a way.
Yeah. But when it comes to working with other artists who have a song that they've already written and they've brought it to you, then a lot of that time go into all the beautifying the production and really
Okay.
nailing it and really giving it that love.
Okay. No, that's interesting. I'm not a musician by any sorts, but a creative in the way of like photography, videography. I get overly critical of my own stuff
Yeah.
versus if I'm editing something else for someone, I know they want, XYZ, but I
Mhm.
always overthink my own stuff.
And sometimes working on another person's project is a lot more enjoyable because you're not, sitting there with perfectionist, or like, well, no, you're still quite a perfectionist in what you're doing, but you're once removed, so you
Mhm.
can look at it more objectively. While your own stuff, you really can't. It's well, you try. What do you
Yeah.
try?
Yeah, I mean, I sat on a video, for instance, I think for 6 months of my own, just going over little pieces and be like, no, I don't like that, and try different things. And whereas I would never sit on something that long for a client.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Same story. Yeah.
My dogs are just freaking out outside right now.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know what they're doing, but that's fine. My wife can take care of it.
Are you out in the
um,
country?
no, I'm in Ottawa. I'm just in Canada, so we have a big backyard here, and I brought my dogs to play with my mom's dog, and they're just all being ridiculous right now. So,
Nice. Right.
how many instruments do you play?
Do well, I probably play three, I would say. The vocals, guitar, and keyboard, but I can find my way around a bass fair enough.
Okay, I've once upon a time tried to play the drums, and it was okay. And then I tried the saxophone just because I thought it was cool, but that didn't go very far for me.
Yeah, yeah. I can play a recorder just enough to, just like those those memes where they tried to do the 20th Century Fox intro.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I can kind of keep up with that guy.
See, I don't even think I could do that. So how has this past year, taken a toll on collaborations and things of that sort?
It really has been difficult to collaborate with other artists, and so
Hmm.
I've been working remotely with a couple of artists. Oleada and Kinley, for example. We did the Prince Edward Island Songwriting Challenge, and I was able to produce both of their tracks that they co-wrote together. And it was a little fast and furious because they would end up creating, banks and then fly them to me, and I would get them loaded in the session and start mixing and getting everything together, and then sort of build from that. Thankfully, everybody has been able to record themselves remotely and do a fantastic job, and in a way has sort of forced these artists to sort out remote recording if they haven't otherwise in the past.
Hmm.
And so I find like a lot of artists have sort of stepped into the world of DIY, get self-tracking from home in a way that if you were to send it off to a producer, they'd be able to use those takes, like really nice, clean, usable takes. So it's been pretty cool to work that way. And it seems like the music industry and the recording industry has sort of like stepped up, and that a lot of like indie artists have found a way to track themselves to a certain degree.
Hmm.
And so it hasn't stopped anybody from stopped the work. It's just been different in that there's not as many co-writes in the same room, and Zoom is a little clunky, so it's a work in progress to be able to write that way.
Yeah, I mean, I know I work with a few local musicians here too, so watching them have to adapt to different scenarios when they're working with people has been interesting. And also like live shows and things like that. We help put on some live concerts too, so
Nice.
trying to navigate that's always been interesting.
Yeah, it's come a long way. It seems like Even a friend of mine who has a studio down the street has found himself doing a lot of this live stream, you know, setup for concerts and venues and things like that, to be able to put on performances online. And it seems like we've really stepped into, you know, what might have been happening, you know, a decade down the road is now happening to, you know, today because of the pandemic.
Yeah, kind of got shoved into it pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just pulling up I accidentally closed my notes here. Okay, so your latest project was the score for The Retreat. Tell us about that project, and how do you inspire yourself to write horror theme tracks?
Yeah, The Retreat was great. I got to work with Pat Mills and Allison Richards and Lauren Grant of Click Productions. And that was awesome because it was just over the Christmas holidays, but it was this very clear idea of what they wanted. It was a thriller in the woods, really pacey, really intense score, electronic orchestral hybrid, which was like amazing. And so we just had a lot of fun creating and developing that, and the team was just awesome to work with. And it did really well. Globe and Mail, it ended up on their critics pick, and it got a little love from the New York Times, and I think it's doing pretty well on like Rotten Tomatoes. So it's really nice to see that film flourish and do really well and get the reception that it got.
That's nice. Yeah.
Yeah, it was excellent.
So what really drew you into the horror and the darker stuff, like growing up and now even?
You know, I'm gonna blame my parents for bringing me to see Tim Burton's Batman when I was probably too young to see it. It was a little bit mature for me, but I think I became slightly obsessed with like Danny Elfman's score, and I ended up having that cassette tape, you know, and it also had Prince was on the soundtrack. I think Prince created the soundtrack for the movie, like it was tailored to the film. And I played it for years, you know, and so I think there's something about that early childhood development that might have like sort of piqued my dark side, I think, or and then of course you go to high school and things like that, and I'm sure you know, I just having like a typical angsty teenage experience in the small town of Wallace area definitely helped to you know, keep me into that kind of stuff. I love scoring horror because it's experimental. Every horror movie is somewhat different. There's so many different genres, and yeah, you know, it's a lot of fun to just see what the next one is going to be. And while I don't actually watch a lot of horror movies myself, I love the scores, definitely. And if it's kind of an out of left field horror film, I definitely want to check it out. Like personally, I think I'm into a little bit more artful horror or artistic or experimental in some way.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not so I like the thriller side of horror movies, but I'm not really fond of like the haunting ghost side of things as much. So I like, you can really get some good feelings when you're doing tracks, and the music really speaks to you sometimes when you're listening to some of these and watching movies. So yeah, it's always fun to hear those.
Yeah.
So Gaslight had a lot of visual storytelling in the music video. Where was that shot?
We shot that in Toronto, just on the east side of, just on the Danforth at Broadview. And it was about 11 o'clock at night. And that was in December. And yeah, we had a very small crew, filmed a fabulous dancer, Murph, who just really emoted everything that the song was about and really nailed it.
How do you find the imagery in a video helps the lyrics? How do you find everything kind of meshes? How does that, I wonder how I'd word that. Or I guess how important is it that the lyrics and the imagery in the video really work together for you?
Extremely.
Yeah.
If it was disjointed in any way, we would have to sort of rethink it. But director Sean McLeod knew exactly how to direct Murph. That she was the dancer and choreographer. The whole video is her essentially having, walking down the street with smoking a cigarette and dancing in an improvisational way that was like showing she was rattled, she was like a bit frenetic at times, cynical. She was going through such a range of emotions, and she was just really feeling the song as she danced and moved. And it wasn't terribly rehearsed. It was really her like feeling the song, and just that casting choice of Murph doing it was really sort of the reason why we knew this was going to work.
Do you guys go through a lot of different people when you're casting, or is it like one and done that you've been pretty lucky with things?
Well, you know what, it would that would be a Sean question, because Sean cast Murph.
Oh, okay.
And so I'm not sure like how that process went on his end, but when he said I'd like to hire Murph as our actor, we saw and we approved. it was
yeah,
fantastic.
Just kind of good to go with that. And
yeah, I don't know how many other people he was looking at, but it really worked out beautifully.
Do you get involved in any of those processes when you're doing the videos, or is that just you leave that to the director more so?
Yeah, that was a director choice, definitely. And the director actually directed my very first music video. We actually knew each other from back in the day, both having come from Windsor, and so there was a lot of trust there immediately. Okay. I was like, honestly, Sean, like, we understood each other's sensibilities about what would be right for this. So I had no issue saying like, just you show me what you want to do, and what we want and there was a lot of no need to have those conversations with that particular relationship and with Sean as the director. My partner also was a cinematographer on it who knew me very well, also knew what would be excellent for the track, and he was there every step of the way when I was creating the track. So he kind of knew like where we wanted to go with the dark and cynical sort of side of a woman being gaslit and sort of like just being on her own, dealing with the emotional ups and downs of that, and like she's rebellious and a little set off and unraveling a bit. And so yeah, as far as being involved with that, I was very much involved in that. We had gone through about 5 different concepts and settled on the dancer at night moving through the streets and doing their performance, and the look that we established. I worked with like my fiance Jeff Mahar, who's a cinematographer on it, and we knew that we were going to do this kind of moody lighting and follow her actions around with lighting. And I was on set as doing running playback. It was a small like skeleton crew of just like a gang of pals like doing this, and it was like a family affair, I guess. Mm-hmm.
I always find those are nice when you have those people you just have that trust in, and this is going to work out because so and so is doing so and this and that. It just makes the whole process seem a little bit better. At least I feel, anyways.
Yeah, it was pretty funny actually, like to see what we were doing. If you were, fly on the wall. We had Blake opping like a Ronin, and Jeff behind him with a Astera tube for light, and then I've got like a Bose speaker, and there's this 3 of us moving as a unit around, all staying behind the Ronin, because we can't be seen. But if you see the video, how much movement the camera's making, we're all shuffling, like we kind of look like damn idiots on the street, like behind this guy and making sure we're always at the back of Blake, who's holding the Ronin. So it was fun and funny, and it was like 5 hours in the middle of the night, and then we ended up getting it.
Nice, that's awesome. With the retreat score having been dropped, are you taking time for rest, or do you have new projects on the go?
Actually, since the retreat, I've scored 3 other like Marvista and Nishama films that are movies of the week, like sort of thriller dramas.
Okay.
And I'm about to start on a film called Cascade, which is a story of sort of a coming about a group of teens who go on a hike, sort of their last year of high school before college, and they discover a downed drug plane, and
Okay.
trouble ensues from there, and it becomes kind of a bit of an action thriller. And
That
so,
actually, that name sounds familiar. I also work with a group that do independent films and stuff too, and that name sounds familiar from someone mentioning something anyways.
nice. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm about to dive in on that, and I'm pretty pumped about it. Having come off of the retreat, and which also sort of took place in the woods and had a lot of pacey, thriller moments. Although the retreat is much more of a horror than Cascade. So
Okay.
it's not quite as a terror ride. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But maybe it is. Yeah.
What advice would you give to women coming up in the industry, being like the producer composer side of things?
Music first. If you are really, and I'm actually borrowing that from Leslie Barber, who I just saw speak, and but I share her philosophy in that, if you're constantly just refining your craft and putting out amazing music that is number one, your best, your absolute best every time, and you're constantly pushing and raising your standard of what is awesome, people will notice you. People will recognize that hard work, and to be confident in your work. And that confidence is very important for people to feel when they engage with you, and that they hear that confidence in your compositions and in your work.
Nice, nice. What's your thoughts on the Canadian music industry currently?
I think it's thriving. I think that there are, sorry, let me give me 1 second here. I want to.
It's a big question. Yeah, there's lots
Yeah,
going on. So
it really is, and there's a lot of opportunities for everyone out there, and it's the music industry, I think, is changing. I think we're coming and stepping out of what was a very toxic time in the industry when women were only seen in front of the microphone, and there it was, festivals just played, there was like one female artist at like a 30 band festival or something like that. I think that we've all had our eyes opened in the last few years, and to see, okay, this is a little unbalanced, and people haven't been begrudgingly not taking the note. Everybody's still doing their part to say, okay, how can we make this more inclusive, and how can we make it more balanced and not as toxic. And I think we're doing a great job, and I think Canada has really has just a fantastic scene right now. And I think it helps artists to actually go be an artist and go do that experimentation. Like, you're an artist for a reason. You have something to say, and now you don't worry about having your toes stepped on in order to say it. It's one less thing you got to worry about, because it's a little bit less of a toxic environment, and it's getting better every day.
We talked to Margaret recently, and she was telling us about the numbers of like female producers, and I was actually kind of shocked. I didn't know that there was the numbers were so drastically different compared to what you would think, almost, I guess. But it makes sense, actually, after you look at it.
Yeah.
It just, that's kind of how things were. So it's nice to see that the industry is turning around a bit and making things different.
Yeah, it is. It's it's everyone's responsibility to hold up the mirror, but it's nice to see that when the mirror is held up, that people say, oh yeah, no, that needs to change. And there's not a lot of fight about it. It's just like, once you become aware of it, then we all sort of do our part to do better.
yeah, if you don't know, you don't know. So now that we're, the voices are out there, it makes it a little bit easier for everybody, and hopefully more so as time goes on.
Absolutely.
So I won't keep you, much more, but do you have any final, shout outs of anything, local businesses that might have been struggling for COVID, or, people to check out in the industry?
Oh, yeah, let me think about that. I haven't been asked to give a shout out in so long. I don't even know. And I never leave the house, so I don't even know.
Well, that's the thing. I haven't left the house much either myself, and you almost think it's like, oh wow, I forgot about this and that.
What do I give a shout out to the no frills down the street?
I mean, hey, we do that a lot with our interviews, and people literally say like, hey, my local food delivery guys, they need every hand they can get, and they're doing the best they can. And so it's something that you might not think is as important, but it helps them out.
Yeah, you know what, I've shout out to our session musicians and session players that have recently or have been doing this, but like recording themselves at home and still getting you the awesome tracks that we need. And everybody who's recording remotely and still, have been pushed out of being able to play gigs, but has still found a way to try to music wherever wherever it's needed. So shout out to session musicians who are still able to keep, collaboration and live recordings alive.
Nice. Yes, that's good. You see, I wouldn't even have thought about that. So there's always a point of view from someone that's a little bit different and enlightening in a way.
Awesome.
But yeah, so I'll let you go for now, and it's been nice talking to you, nice getting to know you, and I'm looking forward to more stuff coming from you ladies in the program, and see how that goes.
Thank you so much. It was really nice to meet you, Tom. Thanks again for the interview. I know those were not your questions, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, honestly, I'm not much of a writer myself, so I do have a couple writers on the team, and I fill in on occasion. I'm more of the concept guy, and then the visual guy. So these things aren't my cup of tea necessarily, but I do the best I can.
I hear it. That's great. I appreciate it so much.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, you have yourself a good rest of your weekend.
You too. Thanks again.
Okay, bye.
Talk to you. Bye.